right? What's true is there's autonomy. That's you, your responsibility. You are a partial author, but you are never the uncontested author of anything. There's always communion. Right? And we've been talking about this victim responsibility topic, right, for 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to talk about it somewhat this week. We're going to talk about it big time next week, and we're going to take this home. And I've been working with Terry Nelson, my dear right friend, and we're going to take this home to the next level. But stay close for a second, okay? So, three things. To be responsible means to have the capacity to respond. And we're going to go 3 steps here. We're going to talk a little bit about victim and responsible. We're going to add a couple of key distinctions. Chris is going to welcome us in, and then we're going to turn to Barbara. Okay? And maybe today that we'll do the evolutionary chakra meditation, right, as our prayer for today, as our practice prayer for today. So let's see if we can find this deeply, okay? 2 basic positions in the world. This is powerful. And Barbara, this is for you, love. Okay? We've talked about this so many times. This is for you. 2 basic positions in the world. Position 1, Buddhist position. Move beyond your story. The story's in the way. Second position, kind of classical American therapy position, right? Every way that you're somehow distorted and unable to function in life is because of something that happened in your story yesterday. Go back and rework yesterday's story, right, in order to be able to be free today. So Buddhism says, move beyond your story, step into the eternity of the present. Therapy says, no, you're being blocked by something that happened in yesterday's story. Liberate yourself from that pattern in yesterday's story and be free to step into the present. Who's right? The therapeutic man or the Buddhist man, the therapeutic woman, the Buddhist woman? Who's right? They're both right. They're both holding a critical dimension of reality. But what we're saying is that although those 2 are critical, there's a third position. And the third position is when I'm called by the future. The responsible person is called by the future, right? The responsible person says, I'm going to create with my response to the situation a new future. Wow. I don't avoid the present. I don't go back to the past, right? I'm called by the future. And I'm called by the future to be able to, the future incapacitates me to respond. I never lose my capacity to create the reality in this and in the next moment. So responsibility doesn't mean I'm cause for what happened. That's a mistake. It's a huge mistake. Doesn't mean I'm cause. It means that I can respond. Responsibility means my capacity to respond. And as we talked a couple of weeks ago, even if I've suffered the worst misfortune, even if I'm walking to the gas chamber, even if I've been assaulted in the worst way, I've been victimized, I've been betrayed, in which I'm authentically a victim, I don't give up to that victimhood my capacity to respond. And in that sense, I become cause of the next moment. So instead of giving up my power, instead of saying, you control me, you insulted me, now I'm insulted, you control me. I was victimized, now you've taken over my life, right? I'm trapped in victimhood, and I spend the rest of my life in the loops of victimhood in which I keep revisiting what happened, right, in that moment and how they did it to me. Now, it could be they did do it to me. And it could be I'm an authentic victim, and we have to honor and embrace with mad compassion every victim. But there's a deeper response than only victimhood. And that deeper response is I choose to be not just an object, but a subject. And as subject, I have the capacity to respond. There's no fate that I can't turn into destiny. And that capacity to respond is hugely powerful. So that's a first distinction. But I want to add to that distinction. That distinction we worked with a couple of weeks ago, and Terry worked with it last week. I want to add to that distinction. So let's take this example that was put into the space, 2-3 weeks ago. So let's say something happens to me, and someone says something to me that makes me feel bad, right? An example that my friend Terry gave. So now I feel bad. And someone says, why do you feel bad? Well, I feel bad because you said something, you insulted me, you made me feel bad. So the responsible position is, I'm being a victim if I feel bad because you made me feel bad. There's an interpretive moment in which I actually give up responsibility. I give my power over to you, and you now have the power over how I feel, right? That's a victim position. The responsible position is, right? No, actually you said something, and I choose how my attention responds to what you said, and I can actually walk through without actually feeling bad. I can actually walk through powerfully and not let you hijack, right, my sense of self, right, and my sense of power. Now, that's a very, very important dimension, and you can't skip that dimension. That's powerful and beautiful. And to be Homo amor, right, I need actually to be able to step into my capacity to transform victimhood, to take my power back, right? To not say I'm innocent, you did it to me. The price of innocence is impotence. To claim my potency, to claim my power, right? And to actually claim the memory of the future in the now, and to decide my future based on how I respond to you. So instead of letting what you just did to me, my past, determine my future, I actually become a powerful, responsible agent. I never lose my capacity to respond. That's beautiful. But it's only half the story. It's only half the story. So let me, if I can, just tell you a story, just a little second. So Buddha had 3 groups of students, right? And when Buddha died, right, each one of his groups of students responded differently. So the first group of students, when Buddha died, they cried. Why'd they cry? Because Buddha died. Barbara died, right? So we cry, right? Because we miss her, because she's not with us, because death is so painful, we cry. The second group of students, when Buddha died, they didn't cry, because they looked at the broader context. They realized nothing bad's happened here. Buddha has stepped off of the wheel of suffering, right? He has either become a bodhisattva and reincarnated, or he's an Erhart and he's gone on, right, and merged with the ultimate bliss union, right, of the supernal drop, right? And actually, it's only an illusion, right, to cry. Actually, right, we're much more sophisticated, we're much more powerful, right? We don't need to be victimized by death, right? And so they didn't cry. Right? They were like, wow, they were able to move through it. That was his more advanced group of students. That was the second group of students. The third group of students, the most advanced of all Buddha students, right? Buddha died, so they cried. Right? Who gets it? Right? It's very powerful. So someone insulted me. Right? At level 1, I'm a victim. They took my power. They're in charge. Right? I've been hijacked. My attention's been hijacked. Right? So I've got to go to level 2, and I've got to go and I've got to be responsible. And I've got to realize, no, actually, I can hold a wider story here. And I can hold a wider story with great power and really understand that I'm responsible, that I can respond. I can be called by the future. I can respond to the situation with full power, right? And transform that insult into a wound of love, right? And use it, right, as a catalyst for my deepening and my transformation, and I can choose joy. And that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. That's level 2. But here's level 3. You don't want to become a person, right, who, when someone said something hurtful, you're not hurt. It's actually okay to be hurt. You see that? That's level 3. Right? Level 3 is, wow, someone said something hurtful. I'm hurt. Right? But then at level 3, I don't get lost in the hurt. I'm both a victim and I'm fully responsible at the same time. Did you get that? I realize that I have full autonomy, and in my autonomy, I'm responsible, and I'm called by the future, and I have the capacity to respond, and I'm in intimate communion with reality, and we all affect each other, and we all impact each other in 1,000 ways, and I'm willing to open myself up and be vulnerable and be hurt by what you said, even though I'm not going to get lost in the loop of the hurt. I'm not going to be telling the story of the hurt every day, right, in a way that paralyzes me, right, and that undermines my capacity to be free and to be in joy. But I am going to take the hurt in. I am going to be vulnerable enough to actually let you impact me. Did you get that? That's level 3. Level 1, right? Buddha dies. His students cry. Level 2, more sophisticated students, they don't cry at all. But the deepest students, Buddha died, so they cry, right? So Homo amor holds that paradox of level 3. I'm willing to open my heart, and I'm willing to dare to cry. I'm willing to dare to be hurt. I'm willing to dare to let the full pain of reality rip my heart open. And the fact that you don't see me, right? That's painful to me. That hurts me. The fact that you don't understand me, right, makes me feel lonely, right? And I'm going to own that loneliness. I'm going to own that hurt. And at the very same time, I don't give over my power to you. In that very same moment, I choose joy. In that very same moment, I respond. In that very same moment, I transform that hurt. I transmute that hurt into an open heart, right? I blow my heart open through that hurt. And I claim my power again. You know, my teacher, Nachman, wrote, Ein shalem melev shavur. There's nothing as whole as a broken heart, right? So to be responsible is not, I don't let my heart break. It's not, you don't insult me, you do. And if I take you seriously as a human being, I know that you're the whole world, just like I'm the whole world. So I take you super seriously, and I'm willing to open the gates and let you in. Because all the gates, even when all the gates are closed, the gates of tears say the masters are still open. And I'm willing to love you enough to shed a tear. But then I take that tear of hurt and I transform it into, right, accessing the deepest part of my open heart. And then my heart blows open and I find deeper than the hurt, I find joy and I find power, right? And I find capacity. So yes, I'm hurt, but I'm not caught in the loop of the hurt. I hold that paradox between radical power, radical autonomy, and radical communion. That's Homo amor. Can you feel that, friends? So that's the first distinction. Who's got it? I just want to take a look in the chat box for 1 second. Who's got that distinction? Who's got that? Who's got that? You got that distinction? It's huge. It's a huge distinction. Okay? Huge distinction. I'm going to go second level. I'm going to go just do 2 more distinctions. That's it. Then we're going to turn to Kristen, then to Barbara. Okay? Like, oh my God. Right? Today's like, it's fabulous, right? It's so good to be together. 2 more short distinctions. Short distinctions. Now, distinction 2. So let's say that actually something happened to me. New situation. New victim responsibility paradox. So we're going to introduce a new distinction. Okay? Let's go. Let's go. You ready to go, everybody? Here we go. Let's stay close. New distinction. So something happened where something went wrong. So let's go deep. So let's say something happened. So when something happens, right, do I choose a blame frame, meaning I say you did it to me, and I figure out all the ways in which you did it. Now, how many of us are masters at that? All of us. Whenever something happens to us, we immediately go to explain why we're not responsible and somebody did it to me. Everyone get that? Whenever something happens, our immediate move is blame frame. You did it, 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 you did it. Right? Who knows that? Who knows that happens? Show of hands. Right in the chat box. Who can give us a yes on that? Right? Any honest person in the world, right? Immediately, right? Blame frame. That's the victim frame. Reality did it to me. Now here's the second frame. The second frame is not somebody did it to me, but I realize there's a contribution system. This is gorgeous. There's a contribution system. And in this contribution system, everybody, including me, has a percent, right? So let's say even that I think that you have 90%. I was betrayed, I was victimized, right? And that's all true, right? And that's all true. And if we don't recognize victims, we won't have compassion for victims. We're just going to be cruelly demanding they take responsibility for that which they're not responsible. There are victims in the world, that's real. When we don't recognize victimization, we lose compassion, right? Conservative ruling parties all over the world are very good at saying that everyone's always responsible and not recognizing victimization. Victimization is real. It's real. But we got to move from a blame frame to a contribution system. So yes, I'm a victim. And I deserve your compassion. And I was betrayed and I was hurt. Right? And we're all betrayed. Right? And we're all betrayers sometimes. And we'd only be betrayed by a person who would never betray us. So it's real. I'm really a victim. But there's also a contribution system. See, even if you did 90% of it, for example, let's say I've got 10%. 10%. In other words, I've always got to be willing to be responsible, meaning to have capacity and power to respond, which means to identify what's my 10% in the contribution system. And then, everyone with us? And then to take 100% responsibility for my 10%. You got it? In other words, to be powerful means I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my 10%. Wow. So instead of focusing on what you did to me, no, I understand. You did something wrong. I got that. You got 90%. But if I'm a powerful being, if I'm Homo amor, Homo amor says, what's my role in the contribution system? And the more powerful I am, the more precisely I can identify where's my role in the contribution system. And actually a fantastic exercise is to take something that happened where you think that you're 100%, you had no role in the contribution system, and to brilliantly discern where actually could I have contributed, and to actually move the action backwards. Maybe I couldn't have done something today, but I could have done something 6 months ago. I could have done something a week ago. Or what could I have done creatively? You got to be massively creative to identify your part in the contribution system and then take 100% responsibility for your 5%. That's powerful. And that's what Barbara and I try to do all the time. You know, we were involved in so many beautiful projects, and there were things that went gorgeously, and then there were things where we suffered together. And we would always say, even when we were clearly the objects of wrongdoing, people had done wrong to us, we'd say, okay, what's our contribution system? What's our part in the contribution system? So to move from a blame frame to a contribution system, does everyone get that? Identify who's got it. Tell me who's got it. Chat box. Who's got it? Who's got this? Okay? Right, this is where you become Homo amor. You can't be Homo amor without this. Right? I've got what's my 5%? What's my 5%? And then I take 100% responsibility for my 5%. Okay, that's distinction 2. Okay, it's huge. It's gorgeous. Okay, last distinction. We got a drum roll. We got a drum roll in the house. Last distinction. Last 3 minutes. Last distinction. Okay? Now this is huge. Last distinction. And then we're going to hear from the voice of the gorgeous feminine. Right? So just let's catch this distinction, okay? So, and Terry, brother, this is for you. So there's a quote that Terry shared with us, which is really beautiful. That is, a core part, I believe, also of the kind of, LifeSpring training. And the quote is, and I want to actually see if I can read it to you. The quote comes from Sartre. And Sartre says that to be responsible, I'm reading it, is to be the uncontested author of an event or a thing. right? Drum roll. This is huge. We got a drum roll here? Drum roll, right? Sartre says to be responsible is to be the uncontested author of an event or a thing. And Sartre says that's responsibility. So here's the thing. Sartre was wrong. You're never the uncontested author of an event or a thing. And here's what Sartre meant. Sartre says that you have to realize that you're radically free. And he writes this in his book, Being in Nothingness. It's around page 550. It's an incredibly important book. And what Sartre says in Being in Nothingness, wrongly, Sartre says, and I want you to understand where he's coming from, because he's coming from a beautiful place, and there's something that we can take from Sartre responsibly. Okay, but first I want to kind of get this for a second, because this is wildly important. Sartre says he's rebelling against the great traditions. He's rebelling against their visions of spirit. And so what he does is he rejects spirit, and particularly he rejects value altogether. Sartre says Sartre is the apostle of cosmic meaninglessness. There is no ultimate meaning in the cosmos. Doesn't exist. We have, Sartre says, I'll give you an exact quote, we can never get our bearings because we have no bearings. Bearings means you can get your bearings when there's a moral compass in the cosmos. For Sartre, there is no moral compass, and therefore you're free. But for Sartre, to be free means that you're doomed to your freedom. You're doomed to your freedom because there's nothing other than you. There's no other value in cosmos. You don't live in the Tao. There's no Dharma. You don't live in the field of value. There is no field of value. The only thing you have is the construction of self that you do independently. And tragically, by the way, for people who get this, they'll get it. If people don't, you can skip it. If you've been with us for like a year and a half, you'll get it. Shoshana Zuboff, in her book Surveillance Capitalism, in order to object to the techplex's hijacking of self's attention, cites Sartre as her source. Meaning Shoshana Zuboff herself refuses to name value, refuses to say that the techplex is violating a first principle of personhood, and therefore her book fails. Because what she says is, oh, the reason what the techplex is doing wrong is because as Sartre says, the construction of self is the single most important thing we can do, and self is created completely autonomously from my inward space of meaning, and that's what it means to be totally free. But if you read Zuboff carefully, the reason she's quoting Sartre is because all through her book, because she's a postmodernist, Steven Pinker is down the hall from her at Harvard, and both Steven and Shoshana refuse to name value as intrinsic. So which means that in their own self-perception, they've stepped out of the Tao. They've stepped out of the field of value. But if you've stepped out of the field of value, then you have nothing which will allow you to challenge the techplex, because the techplex is only wrong if it's violating the intrinsic value of personhood. How many people got that? Anybody get that? So if you didn't get the Zuboff piece, skip that, okay? Skip Zuboff for a second. Come back to Sartre, because Sartre is the key here. What Sartre is saying is when Sartre says you're the uncontested author of a thing, what Sartre is saying is you're the only player. And since you're the only player, right, the entire responsibility is yours. It can't be anyone else's. But Sartre's wrong. He's dead wrong. Right? What's true is there's autonomy. That's you, your responsibility. You are a partial author, but you are never the uncontested author of anything. There's always communion. Communion means you and me. Mark and Terry is communion. But communion is also, let's say Terry and Mark go on a medicine journey together. Okay? And let's say in our psychedelic journey, we access the interior face of cosmos. Let's say I pray and I storm heaven and I feel heaven on earth. Let's say I meditate and I access shunyata. And I actually access through waking up. When I wake up, I access the field of value. I'm no longer asleep. When I'm no longer asleep, when I'm awakened, I realize I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm in a field of value, right? And I'm in a system. That's what systems theory means. Systems theory means, which Sartre didn't get, that I'm never the uncontested author of anything. I'm always a partial author. I might be a 10% author. And I've got to take 100% responsibility for my 10%, but I'm never an uncontested author. Now, why does that matter? This is our third distinction. Why does that matter? Here's why it matters. Last piece. Because if you take too little responsibility, you're a sociopath. Everyone get that? If I take too little responsibility, I'm a sociopath. It's all happening to me. I can't feel, right, myself. I can't feel my responsibility, right? I'm acting in a field of objects. I'm not subject, right? And when I take too little responsibility, right, another word for it is character disorder, right, in formal psychological terms. I have a character disorder, right? Meaning I take it all on myself. Can't actually feel the larger field, right? And now, excuse me, when I don't take responsibility, right, I have a character disorder and I become corrupt, right? It corrupts my very soul. That's what happens when you take too little responsibility, when you always adopt only the victim position. That's absolutely true. But stay close, friends, stay close. But if I take too much responsibility, it doesn't corrupt my soul, it cracks my soul. Did you get that? In other words, responsibility is the Goldilocks principle. Just right. Remember the Goldilocks fairy tale, right? You want your porridge, right? Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Homo amor understands to take responsibility in that position that's just right. Not too little. Too little responsibility corrupts, but too much responsibility cracks. It's a disguised form of narcissism, right? It says I'm the only player in the field, but I'm not the only player in the field. I'm always holding hands with you. I'm always in communion with you, and we're always holding hands with the infinity of intimacy that knows our name, with the field of evolution, with the field of evolutionary love, with the personal face of evolutionary love, the infinity of intimacy, the God force, the divine that never drops us, that every place we fall into her hands. Wow. So this is the paradox, right? The victim responsible dimension, right, can only be held. The victim responsible contradiction has to be transformed into paradox. On the one hand, Sartre's right. I'm all alone. When you see something that needs to be done, become an atheist. There's only you. There's no God. It's yours to do. If we need to develop the Center for Integral Wisdom and create the possibility of evolving the source code, there's no one else to do it. It's mine to do. It's my center. It's not Barbara's center. It's not Mark's center. It's not Krista's. It's not Terry's. It's mine. It's mine to do. I'm going to create it. No one else but me. At the same time, never take a responsibility that is so inappropriate that actually you're the narcissistic single author in the field and you can't partner and you can't be in communion. You're not vulnerable and you're not impacted, but more than that, and you're not held by the divine who's your partner, who's holding your hand. And the reason you know that in the end, truth will triumph. The reason we know in the end, the darkness will be transformed into light. The reason we know that in the end, every child and every woman and every man will ultimately, right, drink from source. And then we're actually going to be able to usher in, right, a utopia. The reason we know we're going to be able to go the whole way in this lifetime is because we're not alone. Because we're not in the field by ourselves. We're being held in every second.